Most photographers think composition is about rules, leading lines, rule of thirds, symmetry. But the truth is, composition starts before any of that. It starts with one thing, and once you understand it, even an ordinary scene can become a powerful image. I have been creating images on the streets for the past 12 years. And throughout that time, I have been taking images for myself, for the pure joy of the craft, for the mental exercise, for developing the ability to slow down and notice the things that others might miss. And through that process to transform the world from something ordinary to something richer, fuller. Like everyone, when I first started photography, I knew nothing about composition. I had no idea why certain images felt stronger and why most of mine did not. But through years of shooting, observing, and being patient, I discovered something that changed my photography forever. It was learning how to see, use, and compose with light. How to turn a scene from something flat and uninspiring, like this one, to something extraordinary, like this. Light can take many different forms, and learning how to use each of them can take months of videos. But today I want to focus on one type of light that I have found especially enjoyable. It is a style that has been used countless times online, and for a good reason, because if understood properly, it can instantly give structure to any composition. I'm talking about the harsh light that you can find on a sunny afternoon, falling at an angle or directly above the city, creating deep shadows. Over the years, this kind of light became the foundation of many images I created for a personal project called Highlights and Shadows. It taught me how to isolate subjects, hide distractions, and strengthen the message of a frame. When you find a strip of light surrounded by darkness, created as buildings block the sun everywhere except that narrow opening, your eye naturally goes there first. Anyone who walks through it instantly becomes the main character. The noise of the city disappears into shadow. All that remains is to wait for the right person to step onto the stage. What makes many photographs feel messy and forgettable is often the lack of structure. That is exactly what shadows can provide. They bring order to chaos, and within that structure, you can place your subject wherever it feels right to you. Or you can reduce them into silhouettes and let the shape speak instead. And the best part is that all of this can be created in camera. You don't need a special location, you don't need a trick, you don't need a special camera for this. In fact, I've created photos like this with any camera I've used, including my phone. The only thing you need is light, patience, awareness, and of course, to know how to set up your camera for success. Of course, none of this matters if you press the shutter and everything looks overexposed because your camera settings were simply wrong. Many people, myself included, when we first pick up a camera, we go straight into auto mode. Because, let's be honest, in the age of mobile phones, who knows what shutter speed, aperture and ISO are at the beginning. And it can be frustrating when you realize that the camera, when you point it at the scene with bright highlights and deep shadows, often tries to balance the exposure automatically, destroying the very contrast that made the scene interesting in the beginning. So if you want to keep that feeling of the moment, you need to take control. What I often do in this situation is simply to expose for the highlights. I let the bright area stay bright, and I allow for the shadows to fall into darkness. This keeps the contrast, the mystery, the direction that first caught my attention. If I'm shooting manually, which is what I do most of the time, I will adjust my settings while watching the brightest parts of the image carefully. A bonus tip, if I have the option, is that I will look at my histogram. I will try to adjust my exposure in a way that the histogram will be shifted towards the left and will not have any peaks to the right, because the right is the highlights and the left is the shadows. But more specifically, on a day like this, I will use an ISO between 100 and 250. I will set up my aperture somewhere between f5.6 and f8 to keep things sharp, and then I will adjust my shutter speed accordingly. This means I will adjust my shutter speed until not everything is visible, because the goal is not to show everything here. The goal is to give a particular look to our image, and in this case, hiding the shadows completely is what gives the image its character. But even if you know how to set up your camera, building an image like this can still feel overwhelming. And it doesn't have to be. Let me show you how to build up this skill step by step. If you're enjoying the video so far and you want more lessons like this, hit the like button and consider subscribing with the bell. So now you know how to set up your camera for shots like this. And now what? Do not stress if you cannot yet build complex compositions like this. This is absolutely normal. The key is to start simple. Find a clean background, a wall, a doorway, an alley, anything where shadow means bright light clearly. Set up your camera as we discussed and take the shot. That's it. That was the first step. Now, let's move to the second one. If your shadows look deep enough and the image looks right, wait and observe. Ask yourself what happens when someone passes through the frame you created. Are they hit by sunlight and they're bright in the image? Or do they remain dark like the shadows around them? Depending on that, you will either reveal their features or create a silhouette. Both can work beautifully. Just wait for the right person and take the shot. A longer lens like an 85mm can help here because with it it's much easier to isolate subjects. Repeat this many times until it feels natural and then move to the next step. Once you understand how light works this way, you can begin building more complex compositions. Ask yourself how two subjects can fit into the frame in a way that light and shadow connect them. They do not need to know each other, they just have to relate within the composition. A simple example is this. In this image, the man in the foreground appears large but dark, but the woman in the background appears small but bright. Now we have the highlights and shadows framing, but we also have a contrast in scale and a sense of depth. You can also place subjects in different pockets of light created by the shadows. Sometimes you need to wait though before the right relationship appears. Practice this again and again until it becomes second nature. And once it does, move to the final step. For this one, use a wider lens, something like a 35mm. Look for long shadows, shapes, lines, and enough space for life to move through the frame. Step back and see the bigger picture. Watch how people fit within those shapes. Let's take this scene for example, one of my favorites of this kind. Here, an interesting triangle forms, framing the people as they pass. Some are fully lit, some are partly hidden in the shadow, while the woman in the foreground is completely silhouetted. And together, all those small elements complete a much more complex frame built through highlights and shadows. The key here is to observe, wait, study the frame, and try again. After a while, even complicated scenes will start to make sense. And that's when you know that your eye has really started to grow. And that is the beauty of photography. What once looked chaotic, it begins to make sense. What once felt ordinary, it begins to reveal something more. The streets are always there. The light changes, yes, but in ways that are always returning. The change that truly matters, though, is yours. When you become a photographer, your perception grows. You start to realize that powerful images were always there, waiting for you to notice them. And now, you see them. Do you think light is one of the most powerful elements in an image? Or maybe the most powerful? What other elements would you like me to discuss next? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe with the bell, or become a member to support the work behind these films. And if you want to dive deeper into what makes a photo stay with people, click and watch this video next to see why I stopped taking nice photos. That was all for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I will see you on the streets. Bye bye.